Admiral Jonathan Harper stood tall on the deck of the aircraft carrier, the wind tousling his salt and pepper hair. The mighty vessel beneath him, a symbol of naval power, seemed to reflect his own confidence. After decades of service, there was little Harper hadn't seen or conquered. He had commanded battleships, navigated perilous missions, and shaped the future of naval operations with his sharp instincts and impeccable leadership. Today, however, his gaze was fixed on a young cadet, a lieutenant named Emma Carter. She was new, fresh out of the Naval Academy, and filled with ambition, her bright eyes a stark contrast to the seasoned veterans surrounding her. Emma stood at attention, her Naval Academy ring gleaming in the sunlight, a symbol of her dedication, but one that Harper doubted would be enough to carry her through the trials ahead. "Bet you $5 she can't start this ship," Harper said, his voice dripping with confidence. He turned to his fellow officers, a smug grin playing on his lips. The other men chuckled, exchanging looks of amusement. "She's got spunk, I'll give her that," one officer commented, eyeing Emma as she observed the engine room from a distance. "But starting this ship? That's not a job for rookies." Harper scoffed. "She's too green. Give her a few weeks, maybe even a few months. But starting an aircraft carrier is a skill reserved for experienced officers. Let's see if she can even handle the pressure of it." Emma, overhearing the conversation, straightened up. A fire ignited in her chest. She wasn't about to back down from a challenge, not after everything she had worked for. The ring on her finger wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a symbol of perseverance and strength. She could feel her grandfather's legacy in that ring, his voice whispering words of encouragement, pushing her forward. Harper's bet had set the stage for what would be the most important test of Emma's career. Little did the Admiral know, the girl he doubted would soon prove him wrong. Admiral Jonathan Harper had earned his reputation through sheer experience and unwavering confidence. For over 30 years, he had been the backbone of the Navy, a man who knew the intricacies of every ship, every maneuver, and every mission. His mind had been honed by the years of service, his eyes sharp with the understanding that he had seen everything the Navy could throw at him. He wasn't just a leader, he was a force to be reckoned with. Harper's office, perched high in the Naval Command Center, reflected his decades of service, lined with plaques, medals, and photographs of historical missions. Each one told a story of triumph, of battles won, and of leadership under fire. He had worked hard to rise to the position of Admiral, and now his word was law. His colleagues trusted him implicitly, and his decisions were final. He had always believed in his ability to spot potential, though over time, that belief had turned into a quiet arrogance. He knew what it took to succeed in the Navy. It wasn't just about skills or qualifications, it was about resilience, experience, and time on the sea. He had guided countless cadets and seen many come and go, but few ever impressed him enough to change his view on what made a true naval officer. Then came Emma Carter, a fresh face in the academy. Harper had heard of her, stories of her tenacity and brilliance, her drive to be the best. But those were just rumors. When he saw her for the first time, standing tall and confident, Harper couldn't help but dismiss her as just another young cadet, full of potential but lacking the experience to back it up. The bet he made with his colleagues was more than just a challenge. It was a reaffirmation of everything Harper believed. Experience and expertise were the real markers of a successful officer. Emma, no matter how impressive she seemed, would never match his years of service. The bet was set, and Harper stood by his prediction. There was no way this young cadet could start an aircraft carrier. His pride told him so. Lieutenant Emma Carter stood at the edge of the naval base, the cool ocean breeze sweeping through her hair as she gazed out over the massive aircraft carrier. The ship was a symbol of power and precision, everything Emma had always dreamed of commanding. But today it felt distant, almost unreachable. She clenched her fist, feeling the weight of the Naval Academy ring on her finger. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind, "Never let anyone tell you what you can't do." It was a simple mantra, one that had guided Emma through her entire life. Growing up in a small town, Emma was no stranger to being underestimated. From her first day of school to the moment she was accepted into the prestigious Naval Academy, people had doubted her. They called her dreams impossible, claiming that girls like her didn't belong in a world dominated by men. But Emma had always pushed back against her peers, her critics, and even her own doubts. The ring she wore had been passed down from her grandfather, a decorated Navy officer who had served with honor. It was more than just a token of his legacy, it was a constant reminder of the sacrifice, strength, and discipline it took to rise through the ranks. He had worn the ring with pride, and now it was her turn. Emma had promised herself that she would not let the weight of that legacy crush her. She would rise to meet it. When she overheard Admiral Harper's bet, her heart sank. The challenge was clear. A rookie like her couldn't possibly start an aircraft carrier. But she wasn't going to let that stop her. In that moment, the determination in her chest burned brighter than ever. This wasn't just about proving Harper wrong, it was about proving to herself that she had what it took to lead. With every step toward the carrier, Emma reminded herself, this is my moment. She wasn't just fighting to start a ship, she was fighting to carve her place in the Navy and honor the legacy she carried. The sun had barely risen when Emma Carter arrived at the docks. The massive aircraft carrier looming in the distance like a fortress of steel and power. The salty sea breeze mixed with the faint hum of distant engines as she approached the ship with a sense of purpose. Today was the day. Today, she would face the most difficult challenge of her career, a test that would prove if she had what it took to command such a colossal vessel. As she boarded the carrier, Emma was met with the skeptical eyes of the crew. Some looked at her with quiet curiosity, others with thinly veiled doubt. Emma wasn't the first cadet to be given such a challenge, but she was certainly the first woman. The weight of their stares was palpable, but she refused to let it faze her. She had spent years preparing for this moment. She had earned her place, and now it was time to prove it. Admiral Harper stood in the command center, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. From his perch, he could see everything, every move, every mistake, every hesitation. Emma was just another cadet to him, someone who would inevitably fail. He didn't expect anything different. His belief in the hierarchy of experience had served him well for years, and he was confident that no amount of determination could overcome the vast gap between his years of service and Emma's fresh ambition. The crew instructor, Commander Lee, briefed Emma on the systems she needed to understand, everything from the ship's engines to the radar systems. She listened intently, absorbing every detail. As the tests began, Emma moved with precision, her hands steady as she navigated the complex control panels. The first test was simple, starting the engines. The hum of the machinery reverberated through the deck as Emma, with focused intent, initiated the process. Her fingers danced across the switches and levers, and to everyone's surprise, the engines roared to life. The crew fell silent. Harper narrowed his eyes, surprised, but he didn't let it show. Emma had passed the first hurdle, but the real test was still to come. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, but she remained calm. One step at a time. She was closer than ever to proving herself. Emma stood in the heart of the aircraft carrier's command deck, sweat beating on her forehead. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the cold metal of the ship's controls. The engines were running smoothly, she had passed that part with ease. But now came the real challenge, maneuvering the giant vessel. A ship like this wasn't just a machine, it was a city, a living entity that demanded respect and precision. She had memorized every manual, rehearsed every procedure in the simulator, and even practiced the maneuvers in her mind late into the night. But nothing could prepare her for the weight of actually steering the ship. The sheer size of it, the hundreds of sailors below deck, relying on her, all of it pressed down on her shoulders. "Commander Carter, you're up," called out Commander Lee, his voice sharp and commanding. His tone wasn't unkind, but there was no room for mistakes here. Emma nodded, steeling herself. She had to get this right. The ship shifted beneath her hands as she slowly attempted the first turn. But something wasn't right. The ship wasn't responding as it should. The hull groaned, and the sound of engines struggling to adjust filled the air. Emma's breath hitched, and she adjusted the throttle, trying to correct the course. But the giant vessel veered off path, its massive weight too much for her inexperience to control fully. Admiral Harper, watching from the observation deck, didn't flinch. A small, satisfied smirk tugged at his lips. He had known this would happen. The test wasn't about the engines, it was about leadership, about the ability to command with confidence. Emma, for all her talent, had faltered. "Try again, Carter," Commander Lee said, his voice neutral but firm. Emma felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. She had come so far, only to fail at the final stage. The doubt crept in like a shadow, but she pushed it back. "I can do this," she reminded herself, refusing to let the failure define her. This wasn't the end, it was just another challenge. One more step to proving herself. The silence in the command center was thick, punctuated only by the low hum of the aircraft carrier's engines. Emma stood at the control panel, staring at the ship's massive radar display. She could feel the weight of the eyes watching her crew, Commander Lee, and most notably Admiral Harper, who stood stoically, arms crossed, his gaze unwavering. She had failed, and it stung more than she cared to admit. Her heart still raced from the earlier mistake, the failed maneuver that had caused the ship to drift out of alignment. Harper had been right, she thought bitterly. It was clear now that experience, not just skill or ambition, determined success in this line of work. But despite the setback, there was something in her that refused to give up. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind again, "Never stop trying. The fight is in you, even when the odds are stacked against you." The legacy of that ring on her finger gave her strength. She had been trained to endure, to learn from her failures, and to push forward no matter what. After the failed maneuver, Emma had expected the usual dismissal, the hushed conversations behind her back, the quiet certainty that she wasn't ready for this. But instead, Commander Lee approached her, his expression soft but serious. "You've got potential, Carter," he said quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "But you need to trust yourself. Go back to the basics. Do what you know. This ship won't respond to force alone, it needs steady hands." Before she could respond, Admiral Harper's voice cut through the silence. "Carter," he called. Emma's heart skipped. She turned to face him, but his tone was far from harsh. "Try again," he said simply. His voice lacked the biting sarcasm she had expected, replaced with something closer to respect. Emma's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. This was her chance. It wasn't just about proving Harper wrong anymore. It was about proving to herself that she could master what she'd started. She took a deep breath, focused on the controls, and began again. This time, there would be no hesitation. The fight had just begun. The day of the final test had arrived, and the mood aboard the aircraft carrier was tense. Emma stood at the control station, her fingers brushing the cold, familiar switches. The weight of the ship seemed to settle on her shoulders once again, but this time, it didn't feel like a burden. This time, it felt like a challenge she was prepared to meet. Admiral Harper stood on the observation deck, his arms crossed, his gaze fixed on her. His presence was like an unspoken judgment, one that she knew would not waver no matter how she performed. The stakes were higher than ever, and the entire crew was watching closely. A slip-up now would confirm all the doubts that had been whispered behind her back since she first boarded the ship. Emma took a deep breath, steadying herself. She remembered the advice Commander Lee had given her. "Steady hands, Carter. Trust yourself." She closed her eyes for a brief moment, drawing strength from the legacy of the Naval Academy ring on her finger. Her grandfather had been here once, too. She had to honor his memory and the lessons he had passed down to her. "Lieutenant Carter, ready when you are," Commander Lee's voice broke through her concentration. Emma nodded, signaling that she was prepared. It was time. With a firm grip on the controls, Emma slowly engaged the ship's throttle. The massive engine rumbled to life, and the ship's hull groaned beneath her command. She gently nudged the rudder, guiding the ship forward. The massive carrier responded smoothly, cutting through the water as if it had been waiting for this moment, waiting for her to take command. The crew's murmurs quieted. Emma wasn't just steering a ship, she was commanding it. As the ship moved steadily into the open sea, she felt something shift within her. This wasn't just about starting engines or executing a perfect maneuver. This was leadership. She was leading a crew, commanding this massive vessel, and with each passing second, Emma's confidence grew. Admiral Harper watched, his expression unreadable. He had seen the power of experience and grit countless times, but now he was beginning to see something new. Emma wasn't just a rookie, she was a leader. As Emma skillfully steered the massive aircraft carrier through the calm waters, a strange shift began to occur in Admiral Harper's demeanor. He had stood on the observation deck, arms crossed, watching her every move with a critical eye. At first, he had expected her to falter again. No rookie could master the intricacies of a ship this large without years of experience. But as the minutes ticked by and Emma's control of the vessel remained steady, Harper's thoughts began to change. He had always believed that experience was the defining factor in leadership. It was something you earned over time, through countless missions and challenges. He had placed all his bets on the assumption that Emma, for all her potential, simply couldn't grasp the full scope of command in such a short time. To him, her youth and inexperience had been insurmountable obstacles. But now, watching her handle the ship with such calm precision, Harper felt a twinge of doubt. There was something different about Emma. She wasn't relying on brute force or instinct alone. She was working in harmony with the ship, feeling its rhythms, its movements. It was as though she understood the vessel, on a deeper level, something Harper had never considered. The crew, once skeptical of her abilities, was beginning to see the same thing. They watched Emma move from one station to the next, coordinating with the crew with ease, making decisions with confidence. She wasn't just executing orders, she was leading, adapting, and commanding in a way that made it clear she belonged at the helm. Harper felt a wave of realization wash over him. The bet, the mockery, the doubts, everything he had believed about leadership and experience was being tested in this moment. Emma had proven something to him. She had proven that leadership wasn't about age, gender, or time served. It was about the ability to inspire trust, to make decisions under pressure, and to stay calm when everything around you was moving fast. He had underestimated her. And for the first time in years, Harper wasn't just impressed, he was in awe. The moment Emma executed the final maneuver, guiding the massive aircraft carrier into its designated docking position, the tension that had been building throughout the day evaporated like mist. The ship, once a colossal, intimidating force, now sat with calm assurance at the pier, perfectly aligned. Emma exhaled slowly, her heart still racing. But there was no doubt in her mind, she had done it. She had truly done it. The crew erupted into applause, breaking the silence that had held the deck in suspense for so long. The murmurs of skepticism that had accompanied her from the start had been replaced with newfound respect. Emma's hands remained steady on the control panel, though her heart swelled with a quiet sense of triumph. She had worked tirelessly for this moment, and now she had earned her place on this ship, not just as a cadet, but as a leader. From the observation deck, Admiral Harper watched her, his arms still crossed, but his expression had changed. No longer the confident, skeptical officer who had made the bet, Harper now stood with a look of reluctant admiration. It wasn't just that Emma had completed the task. No, that would have been expected. It was the way she had commanded the ship, the grace and ease with which she had moved from one station to the next, listening to the crew, trusting her instincts, and remaining calm under the immense pressure of the test. Harper felt the weight of his own words that had been spoken with such certainty only days before. Bet you $5 she can't start this ship. Now, those words seemed hollow, almost foolish in hindsight. He had underestimated Emma, and in doing so, he had learned a lesson he hadn't expected. Leadership wasn't about experience alone. It was about the ability to rise above doubt, to take command in the face of uncertainty. As the crew cheered, Emma turned toward the Admiral. Her eyes met his, and for the briefest moment their gaze locked. Harper didn't say anything at first, but when he finally spoke, his voice was surprisingly warm. "Well done, Lieutenant Carter," he said. "You've earned your place here." Emma's smile was quiet, but it spoke volumes. She had won not just the bet, but her own sense of worth. Emma stood on the deck of the aircraft carrier, the vast expanse of the open ocean stretching out before her. The ship had become more than just a vessel of steel and machinery. It had become a part of her, a symbol of everything she had fought for and everything she had yet to achieve. The wind whipped through her hair as she gazed at the horizon, her thoughts drifting back to everything that had led to this moment. When she had first arrived at the Naval Academy, no one had expected her to make it far. A young woman with big dreams, surrounded by seasoned officers who had spent their lives on the seas. They all said the same thing: "You'll never be able to do this. You'll never command a ship like this." But Emma had proven them wrong, not with arrogance or defiance, but with quiet determination and a willingness to learn. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind once more. Leadership is earned, not given. That had been his creed, and it had become hers. Every failure, every challenge, had only strengthened her resolve. It wasn't about being the strongest or the loudest. It was about having the strength to lead when it mattered most, to make decisions that affected the lives of those around you, to remain calm under pressure, and to inspire trust. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of tests and challenges, but Emma had come out on the other side, not just as a cadet, but as a leader. She had earned the respect of the crew of Commander Lee, and most importantly of Admiral Harper. The Admiral, once her biggest skeptic, had now become a quiet ally. She had seen the shift in his eyes, the moment when he realized that her potential had nothing to do with age or experience. It was about the spirit inside her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the ship, Emma knew this was just the beginning. She had made her mark, but the journey ahead was long. With the weight of her grandfather's legacy on her shoulders and her own dreams driving her forward, Emma Carter was ready for whatever came next. The future was hers to command.